Hello, you have chosen to listen to the webinar entitled Stress, Mental Health, and Coping. This webinar will be approximately 25 minutes in length and was developed here at Montana State University to help Montanans better understand the mental health topic. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mark Schur, and I'm an assistant professor of community health here at Montana State University. My academic background is in understanding mental health disparities. That is, what segments of the population are more likely to cope with mental health issues. Also, I am actively involved in evaluating the effectiveness of a new cutting-edge intervention to help people cope with certain mental health conditions. If you would like to know more, I will share my contact information at the end of this presentation. So let's get started. We have several learning objectives for this presentation. First, you will learn what stress is and common responses to it. You will also learn how chronic stress can end up leaving us more vulnerable to poorer mental health. Second, you will learn how to identify when you or someone close to you is struggling emotionally. Third, you will learn how to effectively respond to persons who appear distressed, as you may find yourself as the one person that can truly be of help. Fourth, I want to share with you two common self-assessments that can be used to measure symptom severity of generalized distress. Fifth, you will learn how to apply positive stress coping skills in your own life. And then last, I will share with you some resources that you can use to seek further help for yourself or others' mental well-being. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why is there a webinar with the topic of stress and mental well-being? Well, there are many answers to that question, but the short answer is that stress and mental well-being touches nearly every person. In fact, you would be hard-pressed to identify one person who has not, at least at one point in their lifetime, been directly or indirectly impacted by either chronic stress and or mental health. For farmers and ranchers, there may be additional sources of stress that many other people in different occupations may not have. For example, we often hear these days about stress around planning for unpredictable weather patterns from year to year. Lower commodity prices are causing further economic strain as well. Thus, farmers and ranchers are likely more prone to experience chronic stress, which can also make them more vulnerable to poor mental health. It is important at this point that we recognize there are different types of stressors that we can experience and how these stressors can actually lead to additional stressors. For example, it may be that because of economic hardships, we may find ourselves overworked and tired. These situations can also lead to relationship problems, which can also be stressful. The point I guess I would really like to make clear here is that stress and mental health does not just impact us as individuals. How we feel and how we respond to stress can very much impact our family members and friends. Now that we have briefly talked about stress and its relationship to mental health, let's take a little bit more time to talk about the number of factors that may lead to poor mental health. Here's a short list. Weather is often a factor in our region that can get many down. Long, cold winters may lead to seasonal affective disorder or even seasonal depression. It may be that a close family member is struggling emotionally and may need extra attention or help. These situations can cause a lot of stress, whether you recognize it or not. Maybe you are the sole caregiver to an older mother or father that requires extra assistance. Regardless of your specific situation, caregiver stress is significant. Another source of additional stress can be disability or chronic illness. These conditions may require additional accommodations that can be not only inconvenient, but downright difficult to implement on a daily basis. Many of us may also feel isolated and don't feel they have anyone they know they can turn to for help, or even to talk to about their problems. When this is a situation, people tend to turn inward even more and actually further isolate themselves. We live in a state with hardworking people. We have a strong work ethic, and yet in this day and age, people are working more than ever just to make ends meet. This can be a significant source of chronic stress and burnout, which in turn leads to poor mental health. This again is related to financial stress, which we have already talked a bit about. Also, we cannot ignore the fact that nearly all of us will eventually face the loss of a loved one. Bereavement is a part of life. The challenge is getting through those times of bereavement, but hopefully and eventually coming to terms with those losses and reclaiming a sense of one's life. So let's get back to stress. What exactly is meant by stress? Well, in technical terms, stress refers to the capacity to withstand strain. In this context, you could apply stress to any equipment, building, or other physical structure. Yet, in the specific context of human stress, we describe the mental and physical reactions to the strain. For example, what usually spontaneously happens is that when stress is felt, our muscles and breathing naturally tighten. Another way we could describe the experience of stress is that for a period in which stress is happening, our physical and mental energy is either blocked or in a chaotic state, meaning that the way our bodies and minds function is out of balance and widely fluctuating outside of a more normal state of functioning. It can be helpful to be aware of common chronic stress responses in order for us to recognize it in ourselves. For example, we may simply deny that we have a chronic stress problem, or we may also have a tendency to blame other problems on other people. Similarly, we may default to simply screening out unpleasant thoughts and feelings. None of these reactions are necessarily helpful to addressing the problems and may ultimately lead to chronic anxiety. When chronic stress does set in, there are many signs and many symptoms that can be helpful to identify it for what it is. Physical signs and symptoms may include muscle tensing, distressful stomach issues, shortness of breath, low energy, and body fatigue. Behavioral signs and symptoms may include sleep problems, angry outbursts, and increased use of alcohol or drugs. Emotional signs and symptoms may include irritability, feelings of hopelessness, and anxiety. Relationship signs and symptoms may include communication problems, lower relationship satisfaction, strained interactions, and even avoidance behaviors. If you are aware of any of these signs and symptoms in yourself, then you may want to seek support. If you happen to notice these signs and symptoms in others, then we encourage you to take the initiative to actively approach these persons to see what's bothering them. Sometimes you are the person that needs the help, and sometimes you are the help itself. Once you have decided to initiate a conversation about your concerns for someone who is emotionally distressed, here are some suggestions to do it effectively. First, express your concerns directly. Point out your observations and ask about her or his situation. For example, you might say to a friend, "I've noticed you haven't come to coffee for a long time and I'm really concerned about you." Whatever you are noticing, responding to that specific behavior difference you've noticed, give them a chance to respond to it. If the person acknowledges that they have been dealing with chronic stress and poor mental health issues, and there is a sense that they may have been thinking about hurting themselves, then you should ask them directly whether they have considered hurting themselves. If the answer is yes, then you should ask them whether they can keep themselves safe. If the answer is no, then you should offer them tangible support in finding professional help. Whatever the case is, offer to listen to their situation and offer them emotional support in the way you know best. Refer them to resources where they might seek help. As with Maya Angelou's quote and statement, be brave. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's the way you want to approach providing support to other people. Just to get you started in practicing a possible response to a distressed person, here's an example list of words that you might consider using in the conversation. I care. I'm concerned. I think X, Y, or Z might help. I'm willing to help by, give some examples. I'm available. It may seem relatively unimportant, but simply saying I care can go a long way to making that person feel like you not only have their back, but that it is important to you that they will be okay. Now, I want to take some time to share with you two simple self-assessments of distress. Again, you might be asking, why would I want to know about these? Good question. The simple answer is there are standard ways in which we can honestly check in about how we feel. The two assessments listed here, the patient health questionnaire is a measure of depression symptom severity, and then the generalized anxiety disorder scale is a measure of anxiety symptom severity. We'll go over both of these briefly. First, the patient health questionnaire is a 9-item type of questionnaire getting at the frequency of depression symptoms. The assessment includes basically a number of items that ask over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by any of these? So I show you these here just to give you an example of different symptoms that one might be feeling when they're depressed. For example, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, feeling tired or having little energy, or trouble concentrating. These, and among the rest on the list, are all examples of what people may be feeling when they are feeling down. Now, as part of the survey, you basically select from any of the following response options: from not at all, several days, more than half of the days, and nearly every day. As you might imagine, if most of your chosen responses to each of the 9 items that we listed before were listed as more frequent than not, you would then have a greater depression symptoms. And if this is the case, and it is not because of a recent loss, then you should consider seeking professional help. The Generalized Anxiety Disorder Scale is a 7-item questionnaire on the frequency, not listed on the screen here, it's actually of anxiety symptoms. Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by any of the following symptoms? And instead of the 9 items from the PHQ, the Patient Health Questionnaire, we now have 7 items for this scale. Some examples include feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge, trouble relaxing, becoming easily annoyed or irritable. And all of these will get at what someone may be feeling when they're having chronic anxiety. As you can see on this slide, the response options are exactly the same as we saw with the Patient Health Questionnaire, from not at all to nearly every day. And as you can imagine, if you most of your chosen responses to each of the items were listed as more frequent, then you would have greater anxiety symptoms. And if this is the case, and it is chronic, then you should consider seeking professional help. Okay, so there are 3 general ways that you may positively cope with chronic stress. One is to control the stressful events. Control in this sense means to think critically about ways to make sure situations do not get out of control. For example, tips include such as planning ahead on how things could work best in planning harvest or caring for livestock. Do you need an extra farm or ranch hand to manage the farm or ranch? Set priorities about what needs to be done now and what can be done later. Do not make any extra commitments that you know you don't have time for. And lastly, find ways to make your life simpler. Another way to positively cope with stress is to check your attitudes. This is essentially asking you to reflect on the bigger picture rather than getting down every time something does not go the way you want it to. You may also want to take time to make an inventory on the stresses that you can change and those you cannot change. The former you can act on, and the latter you'll have to figure out a way how to accept and get around. Set realistic goals and expectations every day and know that not everything has to be perfect. Third and last, you can modify your responses to stressful situations. It may be hard in practice, but while being in a stressful situation at the time, but you can eventually learn how to actually change how you respond to these events. For example, you can center yourself by focusing on relaxing, checking in with your immediate body reactions. Take deep breaths before responding right away. Deep breaths can go a long way to soothing your responses. You can again think of the big picture and turn negative reactions into more positive ones. Also, instead of turning to alcohol or drugs as a regular checkout, you may try exercise or other social activities as a replacement. Here are some ideas on how you can introduce and maintain positive stress coping skills. We just talked about regular physical activity. In fact, physical activity is the #1 natural and amazingly effective way to shed stress and boost your emotional health. Be sure to get enough breaks during the day and enough sleep at night. On a regular basis, you might consider thinking of 3 things that you are grateful for. Stay connected socially. Remember there are others that care and need to be cared for. Last, be sure to eat healthy foods. Eating the right foods has a direct impact on your emotional health and how you feel about yourself on a day-to-day basis. Okay, now that we are at the end of this webinar, I want to share with you some additional resources before we go. 211 is a little known resource out there. It is a free and confidential resource for linking you with local resources. You can reach a live person 24/7 to talk through any issues that you may have. Mental Health America is the nation's leading community-based nonprofit dedicated to addressing the needs of those living with mental illness and to promoting the overall mental health of all Americans. It works to provide support and services as well as education and outreach for mental health. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress, plus prevention and crisis resources. Although a national line, calls are channeled to more local resources within the state so that you're actually talking with someone here in the state. Mental Health First Aid is an 8-hour program that teaches mental health literacy and how to respond to mental health emergencies. You'll see if you get on the website that you can find classes that are offered near you if you are interested in this. The last thing on here has to deal with specifically for caregivers. Powerful Tools for Caregivers is an 8-week program to informal, therefore unpaid caregivers in learning better self-care while they care for a loved one or friend. This program offers a variety of tools such as relaxation techniques, action plans, and communication skills. Okay, so now I'm at the end here, and if you happen to find yourself with any questions or things you want to inquire about regarding this presentation, please contact me at 406-994-3248 or the email address listed on this screen. I'd be more than happy to talk with you about the resources listed on the previous page or any additional thoughts that you have in regards to this topic or getting mental health resources out to your community. Again, thank you for your time. Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit before we finally depart here about the project that we are working on here in Montana. I'm currently a principal investigator of a project regarding a cognitive behavior therapy program that's delivered online. It's interactive, it's free, it's confidential, and can be used on a computer, tablet, or smartphone with access to broadband internet. Currently, this program is designed for adults. The trial that we're doing now through June of next year is for adults age 18 and older and who at least have mild depression symptoms. So if you think you may be interested in or know of someone who may be interested in this, please go to the following URL, thrive4montana.com. That should be up and live up until June of next year, we believe. So again, any more information you want to find out, you can find out on that website, or you're more than welcome to contact me directly at the information that I provided at this following screen here. Again, thank you so much for your time. Take care.